and this is Los Angeles Los Angeles Public Library Zine Club. I'm Ziba, the librarian, and today our Zine Maker special guest presenter. Luis, I'll let you introduce yourself and let us know all about your work with art, illustration, zines, music, anything you want to share from Mexico City. Thank you.
Thank you, Siva. Hi, everybody. My name is Luis Blackaller, and I am indeed in Mexico City right now to visit family. And my mother, which is who I'm staying with, lives in a neighborhood called Las Águilas, which is up on a hill facing a ravine, which is called Barranca del Muerto, which means the dead man's ravine. There's, rumors and legends about how it was named that way. Couple of hours ago, there was a thunderstorm outside, but it's cleared up, so it's a lot brighter. The cool thing about, well, there's many cool things about being here. It's the place where I grew up and lived until around 2006 when I moved to Boston for grad school, and then I ended up in Los Angeles at around 2011, more or less. So it's a place that I love to visit, and I have the privilege of having a room here that my mother lets me use to keep all the stuff that I have collected over the years. As I show you my work and the things I do, you will see that I have a tendency to hoard or collect printed media. I love printed stuff. I love books and magazines and comic books and pamphlets and flyers and obviously zines, which is why I am here today. And I have been consuming and cataloging a lot of them over the years, and they are one of the most important influences to the work I do. So it's pretty cool that I was able to go down there and just dig out a few things that I'm gonna, as we go through some other things that I have here to show, like the regular slideshow presentation, I will sometimes stop and just grab some of these things and, show them to you and tell them where I come from and the reason why they are important to me. Historically, I have been working on multiple forms of media. I have worked on graphic design. I have worked on film. I have worked on television. I have worked as an illustrator and as a writer, and also as a virtual reality producer and a media artist. I have a definite passion and an interest to kind of look at and understand the relationships between media production and culture, and how these things influence the ways we live. Things are very important to me because they are or represent sort of sizing the mode of production in this like Marxist terms after hundreds of years where we've lived in a prominently dominant printed mass media. The screens have been, replacing paper as the predominant form of mass media, and we've been left with access to printing technologies that let us make all kinds of like really interesting publications that communities like the Zine community used to express themselves in a way that's somewhat free from the top-down approach of mass media. So talking about all this, I'm gonna fire up a slideshow presentation that is gonna walk us through a bunch of things I've done and the way I understand more or less the relationship with this discussion about the relationship between cultural production, technology, and power, capital, all those things. Okay, so here it is. Share screen. Share screen. Come on. Share screen. I'm gonna share this, and let's see. Share. Are you looking at just kind of like a slide with the thing?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Just I've been doing like a couple of experiments with the Zoom today, and I don't want to mess it up. So here we go. So here's the first portion of this slideshow, which talks about cartoon distortion and how I understand this or what it means to me. And it is sort of an experiment that I started with friends just at the end of 2019, which is, curiously right before we were hit by a global pandemic that affected everything. But somehow it also gave me the time and the space to really think about all these things. So I am very interested in cartoon language, and I understand it as this tendency that we as humans have to give lifelike properties, human lifelike properties to things and creatures that are not human. And cartoon characters are very good examples of that. They can be rocks or animals or the sky or a cloud or whatever. And they are a very powerful form to transcend our immediate reality and represent or discuss or imagine or envision things that might feel like complete fantasy, but somewhat represent issues that it might be harder to deal with if we try to face them head on. Then there's a little bit there of a description of what is interested to me, like ephemeral printed media and the evolution of storytelling over the history of mass media a little bit. Then going deeper into ephemeral and disposable media. This is a very funny thing because, living in the US for a couple of decades now, I have realized how different the public space in cities is from Mexico and Mexico City, which is where I'm from. And, for example, in Los Angeles, where I live now, it's practically impossible to find a newsstand in the streets. It's also practically impossible to find pedestrians, but that's another story. In Mexico City, there's newsstands everywhere, and they are packed with all kinds of different publications, still newspapers and magazines and even books and things like that. And when I grew up, screens were a less important medium, even though they were, very prevalent. We cannot undermine the importance of like television, for example. It was already the 1970s and the 1980s. It was very important, but it was still limited to, we have to go home to watch it, right? And it was something that we had to do together as groups of people in a way. The television I grew up with when I was really little, we had to turn it on and wait like 15 minutes until it warmed up so that we could watch anything. And then it was in black and white, right? And things like that. But in the streets, where people are waiting for the bus or like in the post office or the bank or whatever, you could always see them entertaining themselves with a piece of printed media, like newspaper or one of those little books with jokes and things like that. So you put it in your pocket and you take it with you, and it carries you through the day when you're bored or you need to be distracted. You grab this object and you know, browse through it a little bit in a very casual manner. And we don't have those anymore. You know, they have become these black mirrors that we have now. And now we have access to all kinds of things through them. And it's just the one we have. And then we do that. So it becomes very interesting to me to think about where this media comes from and who is it made by, and who is it made for, and why, and how things have changed within the realm of printed media up to the day, even though a lot of printed media is still very mass media. You just have to look at the book industry, for example. A lot of it has shifted away, in a way, a little bit to a different realm that's less top-down, you would say. So this is just a little illustration that I have made, thinking about how now we use the technologies that were very difficult to access back in the day. Like when I was a kid, getting something printed, it was next to impossible. You would have to go to a print shop and get a printer to do it for you. And graphic design was like a arcane science, almost alchemy, right? And today we can very easily express ourselves without the help from any technicians, really. And things are, in a way, to me, a form of printed media that resembles a lot all those printed objects from my childhood, but kind of liberated from like the pressures of industrial production in a way that they are produced more like by the people, for the people, in that kind of spirit. And the screen, what's in the screen now, I feel like it's like meant to manipulate us and to coerce us in many ways, like in this like very top-down mass media manner that printed media used to do back in the day. Yeah, there's a little bit more talking about scenes here and the connection between high-tech media and very interesting sort of reverse parallelism that I believe exists in the recent history of printed media when compared to the emergence and recent history of the internet and the World Wide Web, because the web started as a very DIY, grassroots, community-based sort of medium at the beginning, you know, with hobbyists and like user-managed forums and communities and fanfic communities and all this, pretty much resemblant of the spirit of how the scene communities now produce their scenes to express their interests and their concerns and all those kinds of things. And then fast forward to 30 years later, and mass media, printed mass media has almost disappeared. The newsstands are gone, newspapers are almost gone. It's very difficult to find a magazine if you're not in the airport, all those kinds of things. But we have this really vibrant independent DIY bookmaking, printmaking, scene making movement that's all around the world and is extremely rich and diverse. And at the same time, the internet has become this like 5 websites showing you screenshots of each other, you know, basically Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all those. And it's completely top down, and it has completely been manipulated and captured in a very industrial manner. And so this is a little diagram that expresses that a little bit. How the printed media, I believe, has been slowly liberated from the top-down pressures of mass media. And the web and the opposite way around has been slowly being captured that way. And most of my scenes are in part homage to printing practices, formats, and styles, and the language common to these disposable printed publications from the 70s and the 90s that I've been kind of talking about. This is a photograph that I took with a film camera around 1996, before digital cameras even were a thing. And it somehow represents the way in which printed disposable media takes over the space, the public space in this city. This is situated in a street corner. On the street is called Miguel Ángel de Quevedo and Avenida Universidad in Mexico City, very close to the Mexico City, the National University, Mexico City University campus. And I went to, this area is surrounded by bookstores. I went there yesterday to look for a couple of books that I couldn't find, but I walked through this corner and the newsstand is exactly the same, still there, the same mess, 30 years later. So it's very interesting how this hasn't changed a lot. Here's another one, and you can see the diversity of publications that are offered there, including food and cigarettes and all that. This, there's still a couple of these in the US, but now they are treated like curiosities, I think. Like there's one in Larchmont, I think, in there somewhere. Here's another one. And here are some of the publications that I used to look at when I was a kid in the stands, and sometimes reading some of them. I have some of them with me here. Maybe I can switch and show them to you before I continue. You can see Lucha Libre, Fantomas, Calimán, the diversity of entertainment, Rarotonga, that was a great story. Chanok, a very popular one, and some stuff from Europe like the Smurfs or Los Pitufos, and some stuff from South America like Condorito. But most of this was envisioned and produced within Mexico. Curiously enough, the ones that feature American characters like Batman and the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man and Superman were presented to us slightly different than the American counterparts, just by the power of writing a different language when it comes to give the characters voice in the speech balloons. So that's like pretty cool. This means that I'm gonna show you some of these things, how they have inspired me to make some scenes. But before I do that, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen, and I'm gonna do the phone thing where I can show you some of these publications live, because I think it's very nice to feel how they are. And I'll try and be good at talking about them through this. So now I'm gonna do that. And let's see, like this. It's been working all day, but you know how it is. It just doesn't want to do it right now. Just when I'm in front of an audience. Let's hope it doesn't complain too much. So that's me. Switch camera. Yeah, it's working. That's not the one. That's not the one. Yeah, that was the one. So this is the right camera. So you saw that comic book Chanok. It's this one. This is number 1000. This is one of the most popular comic books in the history of Mexican comics, which are called historietas here. And this is number 1000. Chanok is lanchero, which is sort of a fisherman that lives close enough to popular touristic attraction, and he lives of fishing wild animals and feeding them to the tourists. But he's also some kind of action hero that gets involved in all kinds of crazy international situations that himself with this other guy here with the mustache helps resolve. And that's pretty cool. It disappeared thanks to NAFTA. Here are some other covers, which are pretty hilarious. So this had a run of decades in Mexico. It was great. Now, here's another one, which is very different. This is called Super Machos. This series ran for a very long time. It's very different because it's not exactly just adventure-based entertainment. This is a very politicized publication whose purpose is to inform the population about issues regarding labor, immigration, even like international foreign policy matters and all that kind of stuff. It's made by a guy called Rios, which is, in my opinion, a very underrated genius in the history of cartoons. He developed this like very minimalistic style, and his characters go through stories that deal with very prescient issues, social issues of the time. This one, for example, was handed off to me by my grandfather. And if we go to the end and see the publication date, that's November 1968. So this one is, I was not born when this one came out, but I got to read it later. These ones were so popular that were then compiled into books, and a lot of working class people got their political education from reading these. The characters are, different archetypes from Mexican society, and sometimes historical characters like Porfirio Diaz appear and do things there. It deals with kind of trying to educate people about misinformation and disinformation. It deals with interesting issues, understanding international politics. This one is also from 68, and it's already talking about air pollution in Mexico City caused by airplanes. This is about the vasectomy. And this is about a person called Jaime Maussan, which is still around. He's a very vocal advocate of the presence of extraterrestrials in Mexico. There's a lot of religious comic books as well. This one describes the miracle of the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is very important to Mexican culture. This one is called Slam. This one is from the 1990s, and it's trying to be a science fiction anthology of like European, kind of like underground style, European and South American comic books. Then we have Calimán, which is a very important historieta or comic book here, because not only is one of the longest running in the world throughout the 20th century, it's still running, even though it had a hiatus for a while. And during the 20th century, these characters have radio plays and movies and kinds of other things. Calimán is the, I don't know if I am correct about this, but it's probably the publication, so the periodical disposable publication that had the largest number of issues printed weekly during its heyday in the 1950s, I think. And it was like they were printing about like 7 million copies of it, which is crazy to think about. You know, the most popular superhero comics are printed at numbers of hundreds of thousands. Then there's this one, which I really like, called Fantomas. And Fantomas is that guy with the white mask. And he's inspired by this character from like the French movies. He's some sort of like detective thief that is sort of a philanthropist, and also tries to solve world issues by dealing with problems caused by the tensions of the Cold War and things like that. Very representative in a way of the idea of like Latin American sovereignty, or how Latin Americans could influence the world stage in a way that is not always undermined by the powers of America and Europe. It's very interesting because a lot of these characters are actually real people from the political and cultural stage in the world. And this guy deals with them. He has this cat, which is very cool because it's a genius. And he has a group of 12 assistants, which I think 2 of them, no, maybe not. That's probably one of them. Their names are the horoscope signs, and they are like a combination of like Robin and Alfred, but like it's like very cool. So this is Fantomas, which is nice. And I'm gonna stop there and continue with the other stuff. Disconnect. That worked. Also, I was gonna say, if you all wanna ask me questions along the way and stuff like that, I can take a look at that and reflect in real time. But I'm gonna go back to, oh yeah, there's some, yes, gender politics, for sure. That's all there all the time. I'm gonna go back to my stop sharing. See, the funny thing is when you use your phone, then you can also use your kind of computer camera as a shared screen, and then you're stuck outside of the whole thing, which just happened to me. Now I'm gonna go to the slides again, and I'm gonna start talking about some things that I have done that have been influenced by some of these publications. This is a zine called Defectuoso, which is a street photography zine with no words that I am very proud of. I think it turned out great. I'm doing it, making use of a street photography archive that I have produced over the decades, starting around 1905 and up to the present, because every time I come here, I still, go on like very long walks and photograph life in the streets of Mexico City, which I really love. And I made this scene. You see, there's that photograph of the newsstand, inspired by photography present on publications from back in the day where the photography was printed with two colors so that you could save money on the printing process because then you spend less ink. And I took advantage of one of these incredibly amazing and not at all expensive, pretty affordable technologies that we have around these days that we are probably all very familiar with, which is the risograph printer that allows us to basically treat like screen printing or offset printing as if it was a photocopier. It's basically a photocopier. If you don't know what it is, it's a photocopier that uses custom inks instead of toner. So you can basically print with whatever set of colors you want, and it gives the printed end result a very nicely textured, low fidelity quality that really, and at least from how I feel about it, really connects you to the physical feeling, the physical experience of, holding one of these things in your hands. So like the ink feels very similar. It has the size of those little magazines, and I'm trying to publish them like one every 6 months or so. So far, I've done 4 of them. I am very happy that I almost sold out. I make 100 of them only, and I only have a few number 3s and a few number 4s left, which is great. So I'm about to make 5 and 6. Here are some close-ups of the printed pages. I think even though this is a digitized scan, it still manages to come across the richness of the texture and the way these two colors, which are just scarlet and teal, combine together to give us this really broad range that includes everything from almost black to a variety of browns that are like very nice. This is a barbershop. This photograph is from probably 1996 or 98, and it's a barbershop in a neighborhood called Colonia Condesa, right at the beginning of the gentrification process that started right around then, and now has turned it into a haven for what is called digital nomads. If you've looked at the news recently, and there's some Mexico City locals complaining about the invasion from American and European digital nomads that go there and like have been kind of like gentrifying. Furthermore, this is the neighborhood where that is happening just a long time before. And I really love how the barber, which is that guy, he's walking out with his knife, managed to convince the city to let him decorate the street light on barbershop style. The street light is the post there that's painted so funny. This is a photograph that I took again somewhere in the mid-90s, and this is a film photograph. And this house that you see there, where the little kid is approaching, is just 3 houses down the street from where I'm at right now. So this is pretty much the exterior of exactly where I'm at right now. It has changed, but not a lot, which is very cool. And this is a this is a video, so I'm not gonna play it.
Defectuoso, in a nutshell, is a serialized photography journal.
I use that video to show it in different places. I'll share the link to where you can find it. It's like kind of nice and very short, but I'm not gonna play it. I'll just keep going. So I have a ton of stuff. I know I'm gonna fail at show you everything I got, but I wanna at least try. And this other scene, which is also a risograph printed scene called Ping Pong, it is more cartoon focused, and it is really about imagery, archetypes, and fantasies, the archetypes and fantasies that are literally pulled out of all these different historietas that I have showed you, and kind of like then re-envisioned by kind of like my practice as an illustrator over the decades. So what I did for these scenes is I went back to my archives of illustrations, and I basically repurposed everything to fit this publication. So that's assortment of the different covers. I did 4 different ones, and I have stopped making this compilation, so this one is finished. And here's one of the cartoon illustrations that I have featured in there that I really love. This one is one of my favorite ones, the love story between the toothpaste and the toothbrush, dancing to some cumbias. This illustration was put together with few avatars that I designed a long time ago for the Khan Academy. They developed this kind of avatar reward system for the students trying to gamify the learning process, and they commissioned me to make a bunch of robots, which are these ones. This is a self-portrait from 1980, but made a lot later. Again, some illustrations that were made to accompany the publication on a digital magazine called Hermano Cerdo, of the Spanish translation of a short story by a writer that I like a lot called Helen DeWitt. And so forth. Again, these illustrations were made for different purposes. So I went back to them, kind of changed them a bunch, colored them for the RISO, and then compiled them. That's a very accurate self-portrait. And then made these books that are basically illustration scenes. That's number 0. That's the woman on the left is a homage to that hero from that historieta called Rarotonga, Queen of the Caribbean. This one is called Sin Sentido, Nonsense. This is very recent. I put it together just the first issue of this. I put it together just probably 6 months ago or so. And it's very similar to the ping pong, in the sense that it is repurposing a bunch of work that I had made some time ago. But in this case, it's really cartoon jokes. I had the opportunity to contribute to some publications by making cartoon jokes. So what I did here was kind of like go back to this cartoon jokes, change them a little bit, and then take out the dialogue lines so that the speech balloons were empty and compelling the person that acquired the scene to fill them up with their own source of inspiration. And these are mini scenes. Those actually, I did bring some. Here they are. Yeah. So I can show them to you live. These are the classic mini scenes, you know. They are, I don't know if my little icon with me, and it kind of has enough detail to show. These are the, classic one-page mini scenes. The funny thing is, I started making these ones with my daughter because of her, because during the lockdown in the pandemic, she was going to school the same way we're doing this right now over on Zoom. She was in fourth grade at the time, 11 years old, I think she was. And they had an art class. We were fortunate enough that the school that she was going to, Grandview Elementary, had really great and engaging teachers that were able to, pull off teaching on this remote format to these little kids. And this art teacher once got them to make a mini scene, which is this one here called Queen Kitty Adventurers. That's her first mini scene. When she was doing that, I jumped in and made one. And then we got into the habit of doing them together for a while. And that's what these ones are. They are mostly mini comics, and their purpose is just whimsical, comic strip style little things that you can come up with while brainstorming with 11-year-old. So I kind of love them, and I have been able to kind of use them as a starting point to kind of jumpstart my comic book making practice. So I think some of these are hopefully gonna help me continue on with some kind of like longer format work. For example, this one, God versus Dog, which is just a silly comedy about creation myths. And I really have a lot of pretty fun ideas for how this one could unfold. So I'm looking forward to that. Oops. This one in Spanish is a series of reflections about cartoon characters from that era. And I included here like a little bit of a close-up of the text because it was written with a typewriter and then scanned and put together this way. So it's trying to kind of like go back to that era in which you had to deal with it and you didn't have computers and you had to figure it out, right? I'm gonna stop sharing here and then I'm gonna share my phone again. Sorry that every time I try to share with my phone, it is a little bit not smooth. I practice, I promise, but you know how it is. Okay, so how do I? Phone doesn't want to work right now. Let's see. Share screen. Something from second time. Share. Okay. I did it. Jesus. This computer stuff is really getting out of hand for me. So like, here are those mini scenes I was talking about. They are very cute. This one was 100% made by Maya, the kid. This one as well. cute and tiny, as many things have to be. This is the one with the cartoon characters, and instead of making a poster on the other side, what I did was make more scenes, so you can kind of like flip it, and then you have two scenes on one. And you know, these ones, this is called Cero a la Izquierda. This is a literary magazine, or that's what we call it, but I think it's a scene that I and my friends used to put together in high school in like 1986, 1995. And you can see with these ones, this one is called Circuito Interior, which stands for inner circuit, which is the name of one of the freeway loops that go around the city over here. And again, it's a sort of illustrated literary scene. These were put together just with photocopies. The first ones were mimeographed, but I don't have any left. So they show a very interesting, you know, transition between, there was no digital desktop publishing back then. You had to do all this by hand. We had a friend that wanted to be a graphic designer and became one before computers were the thing. So he was really into kind of making this things like very rich visually, and we really appreciated that. And then we moved on to 3 decades later, where you see this, in which the lack of the use of a computer for laying out the publication becomes deliberate choice rather than something that you have to do because computers didn't exist at the time, right? So it's kind of like interesting, and I feel somehow freed, even though it becomes more difficult to do these things without using a computer, except for, you know, scanning and then printing it, than going, you know, the Photoshop and Illustrator and Design, right, and all that kind of stuff, and making the images there. Nothing against that. I just very recently have started feeling a lot more and more trapped by the power that these digital software companies have over us. Here's another one. This one is really a comic book. This one is just the cover and the back cover, because I don't have one here that features the interiors. This is one that we made around 1994, I think. And that's it, yeah. No, I'm gonna stop sharing. Stop sharing. And, yeah, mimeographs were cool. And I mean, they still are. You can get your hands on one, you probably have a lot of fun. Screen share, back to this thing, share. All right, let's see what's next. This one is very cool in my opinion. I don't know if it is appropriate to call it a thing. I do call it a thing because to me, if you made it yourself in a very short run with a very non-professional purpose, then to me it's a scene probably. This is a picture book with a vinyl record that I put together with my friends from the Czech Republic. Siva was nice enough to play one of these songs last night on the radio in Long Beach, and thank you for that. It was like a very nice surprise. Again, it's a picture book that resembles in a way those like little picture books with a record that we used to have when I was little, that went through Disney stories and stuff like that. I remember Tinkerbell, they tell you when to turn the page or something like that. But this one has been turned into sort of surrealist, psychedelic, erotic picture book that then mixes again a bunch of influences Charles Burns and Louis Bourgeois, and it's the story of a man that confuses his house with his lover. And that's what it's all about. It's very surrealist and sort of a poetic endeavor. It's less narrative than lyrical. And then going back to here, I was showing you from the world of disposable media, how historietas or Mexican comic books and magazines and photography magazines kind of like influenced me to produce these scenes and do something with my own work that was heavily inspired by them. And there's something else to be said about the time where I grew up and the access to learning materials that we used to have when there were no computers, right? And this is what is called papelería. I have no reference for whether these things existed in a similar format in the US or not. But these papelerias were basically kind of like really tiny bodega size staples or office depots. They would sell all kinds of supplies for schools and offices and things like that. But one thing that they have, and again, wherever you lived in Mexico City, there was one of these in your block, right? So that was another thing. And say the history teacher gave you a homework about Mexican independence. Then you would go home, have your meal or whatever, and then you would tell your parents and they would give you like, a few pennies, and you would go to the papeleria and then you would get a monograph, which was a single page that had a bunch of information behind, kind of like Wikipedia style, about the historical occurrence that you were interested in. And then on the other side, illustrations about it. Here's the interior of that papeleria. And here you can see not just a bunch of textbooks, but on the walls on top, you can see these monographs or monografias as they were called. And here there are some about natural science, and you can see some more about, geography and planet Earth and geology or whatever. And you can, if you look at the top left, and it's visible through the transmission of this Zoom, you could see some with historical characters that, back in the day were all very bearded, like, I know a little bit. Here's an example of the big monograph about the day that the Mexican independence started, with the official protagonists of the time. And on the top left, the enactment of Miguel Hidalgo doing the El Grito. I don't know how to translate it because it's not the yelling and it's not the scream, but it's when he said, let's go for independence, and everybody follows, kind of thing, or so it's called. And on the other side, on the right-hand side, you have these really little ones. These were like the size of trading cards, and these were for historical figures. And you would get one about a particular person, like Sor Juana, like Schubert, Chimalpopoca, Catalina de Medicis, Rosario Castellanos, which is a very good Mexican writer, and Francisco Marquez, which is one of the cadets that were murdered by the American army during the Mexican-American War, as they call it. So you would get this about these people, and in the back, you would have the information, the biographical information about them. And then you would use that information to, have some thoughts about it, and you would paste the little trading card on your notebook, next to the writing that you have put together in your composition. So that's again something that I look back at the present, being a parent, and how kids have access to information now that they use. I'm starting to, again, just very loose analogies. I start to make very loose analogies. I can't help myself. So I kind of draw a line between these monographs and Wikipedia. And I also kind of see that there's a way in which these things could be thought of as, mini scenes with themes that would be informative about historical matters or things like that. And then blogs on the other hand. And inspired by that, I started this mini scene, which is accompanied by a blog about mostly historical figures that I believe is worth like thinking about or learning about. And it's called Un ejemplo a seguir, which means an example to follow in English. And I just wanted to have the title in Spanish and the content in English for reasons that I don't fully understand, but sometimes I think that way, so I go and do it. And this is the poster of one of the mini scenes featuring Divine, which is a character that I adore. So like it's featured in there as one of them. And there is a Tumblr blog that I can share the link to, in which I post pictures in black and white and as a scrapbook in order for it to be where I can then go take examples and put them in the mini scenes. And this is how the scenes look like. Basically, each one of them features 3 figures or subject matters. And this one, in this case, has a little writing about Ursula K. Le Guin and a little writing about Timnit Gebel, which for you that do not know, she's not as famous as Ursula K. Le Guin, is technologist and technology activist that is very active in the realm of like artificial intelligence. And then in this case, work of art from Mexican culture that represent the goddess called Coatlicue, and then some written information about them that is somewhat of a opinionated mini essay that I put together about this character. So the subjects and the QR codes take you either to Wikipedia pages or to the Internet Archive, to particular publications that could have relevant information about these characters. And these are meant to kind of reflect upon these monographs that I used to have around when I was little. And then, finally, just to continue talking about scenes, but to wrap it up a little bit, I do believe in a future of media conceived primarily as a public good working for the people. I believe that we could challenge and reorganize the means of production and distribution of mass media so that it works differently from what we've historically come to experience in both in material and cultural ways. You go back to the Gutenberg press and you could see this emerging potential go in a different direction than these heavily industrialized cultural factories that we have now. And I think scene culture is an inspiration and a template towards that goal. I think it really is trying to kind of find a way through the cracks and use the means of production in ways that were not intended, like through luddites, if you know what I'm talking about. And hopefully that will, take us somewhere close. So I'm very inspired by making scenes and also consuming them. I think it's a very nice way to learn about our fellow humans and the amazing the diversity of the human experience. And, here's just a collection of pictures from Finfests with a series of, friends and acquaintances that I got to meet because of being a part of the scene world and sharing my work with them and stuff like that. It's a happy picture. Okay. It's 1 hour, so I think I have taken all the time, right?
Oh yeah, thank you. That was really great. And then maybe real quick answering John's question, any theories on why newsstands still exist in Mexico City and not in Los Angeles?
That's a good question. I don't know, it might be just different forms of inertia, maybe the speed in which industrial production moves in both places, but also maybe the costs associated with moving from one end to the other. I really would have to think about that one, John. It's a good question. Yeah.
Well, then thank you everyone for your questions and their comments. I see that the newsstand is now a cell phone in one spot, and that in Van Nuys. Oh, okay. So yeah, and in LA, all over, not as many newsstands, but Mexico City, yes. And real quick, what did you study in grad school in Boston?
I went to the MIT Media Lab. I got into the computer nonsense a lot, and that's what I did. It's funny because going back to the newsstands and all that, I was gonna the next chapter of this talk that I had prepared for you all is about kind of like Mexican activism through the act of printmaking, and it was gonna tell you the story of artist and activist group that existed throughout the 20th century called Taller de Gráfica Popular, which kind of takes this look at this other extremely vibrant relationship between kind of labor movements and revolutionary thinking in Mexico and printmaking artists and the making of, activist newspapers and all those kinds of things, basically like zines, but they were not even called that way like back then. The ones that are very politically oriented, very like that. And it's very strong part of like Mexican culture. So I don't know if that existed the same way here in the US. Maybe it did. I'm ignorant about that. But going back to John's question, the thing about why printed media is so embedded here, maybe it has to do with the relationship between the working class and printmaking that is very strong around here, but I don't know. And just ripped off that again. Yeah, I had a lot more material, but I promised myself to spend like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, and then this one that I was supposed to spend 10 minutes on turned into an hour. But I didn't really know what to expect, especially because I was gonna show you all these publications. Like this little book here, for example, it's illustrated by one of those people from the Taller de Gráfica Popular. And this is a reprint of a book that was printed in the 60s that was printed as part of a collection of literary efforts by a group of anthropologists in Mexico City that were embedded within indigenous communities and doing ethnography work with them to kind of like tell the story of how they live. So it's like pretty cool. That stuff is another window into another world, and I didn't have a chance to touch upon it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us from Mexico City and everyone for listening with questions and comments. And I wish we had 2 hours. That's our hour. So hopefully we see you at a future Zine Club and we hear more from you.
Oh yeah, that would be great. I'll happily do more of this. And thank you all for being here. I'm grateful that I had a chance to share my work with you and my interests in some of the things that I have collected over the years.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.